Hi, I'm Gautam Chintamani and we are at the Cinemaazi Studios once again. Today we are going to talk about a breed of actors who's expected to do all sorts of things, sometimes the meaningless, sometimes the bizarre, but all in the effort to make either the leading man or the leading woman look good. Now there have been a lot of such characters. Technically they're called supporting casts, supporting actors, but there is also the comedian who plays a very, very important role in Hindi films. Now this comedian, of course, by the definition of the word, is expected to make the audiences laugh, to lighten up the mood, and just to play a link between scenes or a link between situations in the film. But sometimes the purview of the comedian increases, and one of the actors who contributed immensely in this aspect is none other than Asrani.
सारी दुनिया देखेगी माँ, ये सूरत और ये आवाज, बस हीरो के लिए यही तो गुण.
Asrani was born in 1941 in Sindh, which was then the undivided India. His family shifted to Jaipur, where they started doing a carpet business. But Asrani was never interested in the family business. He always wanted to do something else, try and explore something that really pushed him beyond the limits. Now, he liked to act. He also started training himself as an actor with a theatre group and also provided his vocal talents to the All India Radio in Jaipur. But what made Asrani a powerful force in Hindi films? He acted in over 100 films in the 70s, over 100 films in the 80s, and perhaps from the late 1960s, early 1970s, till the mid-2000s, he has been an integral part of popular Hindi films. There is much more to Asrani than what we know. He has been a part of some of the greatest films, but more than that, he has also contributed in the making of some of the finest actors in this country. We'll get to know all that, where we take a different kind of a trip, where we are talking more about the pillion rider or the sidekick, and that is where Asrani truly excelled, sometimes outshining the leading man as well. It was in the 1960s that Asrani decided to become a professional actor upon the advice of few people from the industry. He went to Pune then, enrolled himself in FTII, and was one of the first acting students to graduate from the institute. But in his own words, Asrani says that that was not his ticket to stardom and success, which he believed would be. He would often take the weekend off, go to Bombay, search for roles and try and meet people, but nothing seemed to work out for him. In the interim, he started teaching at the FTII Institute as well, and a few of his students, that's why many people in the industry call him Asrani sir, including Mr. Bachchan, were Jaya Bahaduri, Shatrughan Sinha, Danny Dengzongpa, and Shabana Azmi as well. He got a small little role in Hrishikesh Mukherjee's Satyakam as well. In the late 1960s, Hrishikesh Mukherjee was looking for a new, fresh face, and he had heard about Jaya Bahaduri, who was a marvelous student at the institute then, and it was Asrani who had connected the great Rishida and Jayaji, and that's how Guddi came about. And then later in Mere Apne, Asrani left a mark.
ये बोलिया, चल भाग यहाँ से दफाओ.
हाय हाय, देखो जरा, बड़ों से इस तरह बात करते हैं. इज्जत से बात करना नहीं सीखा क्या?
एक दूंगा, थोबड़ा घुमा के रख दूंगा. जानते नहीं किससे बात कर रही है?
Once he became a full-time actor comedian in the 70s, there was no looking back for Asrani. There's hardly any film iconic or a milestone film, at least as far as Hindi cinema goes, in the 1970s and to a great extent 1980s, that did not feature Asrani. Be it films like Guddi, Bawarchi, Abhiman, Sholay, Chupke Chupke, Alika Badhu, Aaj Ki Taaza Khabar, for which Asrani won the first of his 2 Filmfare Awards as well.
और आप मिस्टर चंपक भूनिया.
चंपक हूँ?
भूनिया, सुनील के गहरे दोस्त हैं.
Very glad to meet you, Mr. Bhu. मियाँ, आपसे मिलकर बड़ी खुशी हुई. मुझे भी आपसे मिलकर बहुत खुशी हुई है. Thank you.
Such was Asrani's impact as a comedian that between 1973 and 1982, there was not a single year that Asrani was not in the running for some award or the other when it came to comedy. In fact, this is also the decade where he won 2 of his major awards. Asrani played the sidekick or the comedian with nearly every important leading man and leading lady in Hindi films, be it Rajesh Khanna, Dharmendra, Amitabh Bachchan, Shatrughan Sinha, Mithun Chakravarti, Jitendra, Govinda. there was not a single actor that Asrani did not find himself in a film with. In fact, in the 1970s, once he came into his own, he did over 100 films in both 70s and 80s. Asrani's brilliance lay in the fact that he was a trained actor. Of course, there were many. He was trained on the stage. He knew how to modulate his voice thanks to his stint as an announcer with the All India Radio in Jaipur. But he also taught acting to students. And when one says teaching acting, it's not limited to just comedy. Unfortunately, in popular Hindi films, a comedian is never taken seriously. There is hardly a role that comes across a comedian's way which will push him or her beyond the known comfort zone of Hindi films to try and see some kind of acting prowess, some kind of theatrics which pushes the boundaries. Asrani got this opportunity in Gulzar's Koshish, where he played an evil brother. He also tried to go a bit serious in Prakash Mehra's Khoon Pasina, where he's a very angry husband of Aruna Irani, because not for any other reason, because Aruna Irani comes from a very rich family, and that reminds him of his shortcomings.
मेरे दोनों भाइयों में से कोई भी होता ना, तो शिवा के सारे खानदान के गड़े मुर्दे अभी तक उखड़ गए होते।
तो कर ली होती शादी किसी जमींदार से। मुझसे क्यों प्यार किया? मुझसे क्यों ब्याह रचाया? तो मेरे साथ पढ़ती थी और तुमको अच्छी तरह मालूम था कि मैं एक किसान था और किसान ही रहूंगा। पढ़ लिख लेने से या ये फार्म लेने से मैं जमींदार नहीं बन सकता।
He's a very soft-spoken character in the film who does not like the idea of being subservient to his father-in-law, whose name is, for no surprise, whose name is Zalim Singh. So that is the kind of actor that Asrani was. Asrani's brilliance also lay in the fact that he could take inspiration to play certain characters from places that none of the leading comedians of that era would think of. For instance, take the role of the jailer that he played in Sholay. Asrani credits his acting guru Roshan Taneja as the one who gave him the idea to think of the jailer as a caricature of Hitler. Asrani heard a lot of records and a lot of recordings of Hitler's speeches and the passion and the fervor with which Hitler used to speak to his audience. Yes, Hitler! I am an Aryan. So that's the kind of thing that Asrani took and put in his character. हम अंग्रेजों के ज़माने के जेलर हैं.
अंग्रेजों के ज़माने के जेलर हैं. आजकल के जेलरों की तरह नहीं, जो कैदियों को सुधारने की फिक्र में लगे रहते हैं.
But more than that, it's interesting how he got inspired by Jack Lemmon's character in The Great Race and took that sing-song villainous laughter that Jack Lemmon's character in the film Professor Fate used to have. Ha ha! And tried to put that to the jailer's character. Now, when you see these two things in sync, the kind of character that the jailer eventually turns out to be, he's there in just 2 scenes. It stands out in memory. And even today, 45 years later, Asrani believes that when the minute people look at him or the minute people see him, they are reminded of the Angrezon ka zamane ka jailer, and they keep asking him to reprise that great dialogues that he had. That same year in 1975, he played a very, very lovable rogue in Rafu Chakkar who's trying to impress people.
तुम जैसे लड़के के साथ प्यार नहीं कर सकती. Impossible.
क्यों? Why not possible?
क्योंकि तुम हर लड़के के पीछे भागते हो.
गलत. Wrong.
He's a manager of a traveling dance group, and that is where he tries to be smart, and he has this strange habit of repeating everything in English to show that he's not your average bumbling fool. So there is this dialogue ki ghabrao mat. So he says, don't worry, duniya aani jani, the world is coming and going. Main bhool gaya tha, I forget. He keeps talking like this. These are the kind of small nuances that Asrani would bring to his characters, which would just change everything.
Oko mat, don't cut. मैंने लड़कियां पसंद कर ली. These girls me like.
Asrani also explored the sensitive side of the so-called comedian in the films that he directed himself. He became a huge star in Gujarati films. In the 70s, he was the leading man in Gujarati films. There were many films like Ahmedabad No Rickshaw Walo that he played the lead as. But even in Hindi films, he directed Chala Murari Hero Banne, which is one of the most poignant descriptions or depictions of Hindi films and the obsession that drives people crazy.
मुझे खुशी इस बात की है कि इतनी कामयाबी के बाद भी तुम्हारा दिमाग खराब नहीं हुआ, वरना इस लाइन में तो लोग भटक कर रह जाते हैं।
नहीं मास्टर, दिल में लगन हो और तुम जैसा साथी हो, मैं तो क्या, कोई भी नहीं भटक सकता।
You would not think of Asrani as the leading man because he was not supposed to be the leading man. He was supposed to be the comedian. He was supposed to be the funny guy. He was supposed to be the guy who keeps laughing, or he was supposed to be the guy who is the butt of all jokes. But in films like Chala Murari Hero Banne, where he's depicting the loss of innocence of a typical man who becomes a film star, is something that very few films, when they depict Hindi film industry, caught on to that emotion. But in the 80s is when, fortunately or unfortunately, is how most of us remember Asrani. Now, he formed a great partnership with Kader Khan.
जनार्दन जी जो हैं
नमस्ते, कौन है ये लोग?
बड़ी उम्मीद लेकर आए गुरु, इनका तो काम करना ही पड़ेगा, और फिर मैंने इनको जबान भी दे दी है।
जबान मुंह में रखो।
शक्ति कपूर।
अरे मैंने तेरा क्या बिगाड़ा था, तूने मेरे कूल्हे पे लात मारी? तुम्हारे कूल्हे पे लात मारना मेरा कर्तव्य है, हर रोज मारूंगा। मैं रघुवीर चाचा से इसकी उल्हाना करूंगा। वही तो मैं चाहता हूँ, करो। क्या लात मारी? क्या लात मारी?
And Aruna Irani.
चार? हाँ। क्या नाम है उस पहलवान का?
गेंडा मारू, चट्टान उखाड़ू, हाथी पटक पहलवान।
They worked in a plethora of films, and there were films made by T. Rama Rao, Dasri Narayan Rao, K. Bapaiya, which were the remakes of many Telugu and Tamil films. And these films had a completely parallel comedy track running through the course of the film. At times, the track the comedy in these films didn't even make sense to the main plot. But that is where people like Asrani excelled, because they got some kind of relief for the audience, but at the same time tried to do something that did not alienate them too much from the narrative. In the 90s, Asrani formed a great partnership with Priyadarshan. He worked in a lot of films with Priyadarshan. Later in the 2000s, the kind of films that he was doing, he was very depressed with the kind of roles that he was getting as far as comedy went, because he felt that they became too vulgar, the dialogues became too vulgar, and there was very little left for comedians to do.
ऐसा कोई दूसरा रापचिक माल है क्या?
What nonsense! आप मुझे समझ कर रहे हैं?
दलाल?
मैं मैनेजर हूँ, दलाल नहीं, मैनेजर हूँ, समझे?
जब तो सुखी और बाजे का ब्याह नहीं हो जाता, तब तक वो अंदर बंद ही रहेगा। भूखा प्यासा बेहाल हो जाए, चिल्लाए, रोए, मर भी जाए, तो दरवाजा मत खोलना।
आप जोर से क्यों बात कर रहे हो? कोई और भी बात कर रहा है, इससे बात करिए। सॉरी भाई, सॉरी यार। हाँ बोलो, क्या बोलो? मुझे मालूम तुम इसी होटल में हो, मैं तुमको ढूंढ निकाल।
But nonetheless, the legacy that Asrani has as a comedian is something that very few have come close to. Of course, there have been comic stars such as Mahmood, Tuntun, Kader Khan, Shakti Kapoor, who became a larger part of the consciousness as far as the audience recall goes. But Asrani is somebody who has been a constant factor from 1969-70 till today.
वो पप्पा, पप्पा जी बोल, पप्पा जी। जी पप्पा। आगे नहीं, पीछू जी लगा, पीछू। जी पापा जी। जितना बोला उतना ही बोल। चुप क्यों है? मुंह में जबान नहीं है क्या? है ना पापा जी। जबान लड़ाता है? सॉरी पापा जी। पहले गलती करता, बाद में सॉरी बोलता है? अगली बार पहले सॉरी बोलूंगा पापा जी। मतलब बाद में गलती करेगा? नालायक।
There are very few of that generation who have continued to work, who have continued to excel throughout generations, acted with subsequent generations of filmmakers, and the success, the kind of success that an Amitabh Bachchan is enjoying, or a kind of resurgence that Rishi Kapoor or Sridevi enjoyed, Asrani is not far off from that kind of rediscovery. We hope that a lot of young filmmakers or young writers, also keeping in mind the kind of platforms that we have today, online streaming platforms, so on and so forth, try and come up with something which really takes the potential that Asrani had and give him a role that becomes a landmark in the later half of his career. At Cinemaazi, there are hundreds and scores of memories of people like Asrani, and there is no reason for us to forget these stalwarts, and there is a simple reason for us to enjoy them every day, because nothing like reliving the past. Thanks for watching and hope to see you soon.